We've done early videos in the steel shop showing you the different processes and the welding, the cutting of the steel. We've also been into our woodwork machine shop. And like the same thing goes throughout, you've got to have the right kit to do the job. Spraying's no different. We've already gone through some of the sprayers we've used for top coats and stuff. When we was looking at a new shot blast machine and making sure that shot blast profile is what it needs to be, that's all well and good if you've got a real good profile, so then we can hang these epoxies and fillers because we know it's going to adhere properly. And this is the key to it. So you get the blast profile, and then we need to get as much paint on as quickly as possible. Because we're spending a lot of money on equipment, we're spending a lot of money on material costs, so our labour cost is probably the highest cost of all. So what we need to do is make sure we can get that build as quickly as possible. So there's no point using a little paint sprayer and have to put 10 coats on, because we're going to have to thin the paint down that much to get the paint on that it's going to take us so much man hours that we're going to have to keep charging more and more for the boat. We have to try and keep the boats as realistically priced as we can. We've had many comments, people saying, the boat's just so expensive, but we have to charge that to try and make any money. It is a business at the end of the day, it has to make a profit, so we have to work even harder to try and get the right machinery, get the right tool for the job so that we can do it as quickly and efficient as possible. The first machine we've got, again, it's an airless sprayer. It's quite a funny bit of kit, this one. You can see it's got quite a long spout on it for spraying. So if I'm doing ceilings inside, this is what we mainly use this one for, is internal stuff. Doesn't have a lot of overspray, so you can go inside a boat if you want, you can spray the ceiling, or if we're doing boards off the job, and they're quite wide, some of the boards, so you can't lean over, so again you can sort of lean over, you could spray it all. So amazing bit of kit really with that extension on it. It really, when I first got it, I thought, I can't see how that's going to work, but to be fair, it's been a great little bit of kit. And that'll go up to, it'll do internal primers and stuff like that, no problem. But if you tried to put an epoxy through that, you'd have to thin it down that much that it just wouldn't work properly. And take a long time to dry, and you've got more problems then with curing. So we wouldn't use that for that. So then we've had, this is an air assisted airless, which we've been using for, since we've gone back onto the narrow boats, away from the bigger boats and stuff. This is an all-round machine which will do pretty much everything to a very good standard. If you're putting thick epoxies through it all the time, the maintenance is a lot higher, and I can't physically get the build that quickly, especially as the machine gets worn, or the epoxies this time of year, because of the cold weather. We've not got proper heated facilities to keep the paint at a certain temperature. So when you're trying to put really thick epoxies through that machine in the winter, we end up thinning it down too much. And again, we've got the same problem then. We've got to get lots more coats on. But if that's in the winter months when it's quite cold, if you're putting too much epoxy on with a lot of thinners, you can still get runs and sags, or it just takes too long. By the time you've got set up and you've put 3 coats of paint on, the day's gone. I've had to invest more money again to do the job properly. All 3 of these machines are Graco, an American company. I've been using them for years. All of the tips work on all 3 guns, so that's why I like it. So instead of buying different tips for each one, everything sort of, I can use that tip off that one onto that one or onto that one. And high-tech spray, we buy all our equipment off, and they're always helpful, and if there is any issues or anything, they're always around to help. So some of the epoxies we use, this one is actually an airless sprayer, not air assisted airless like that, because we're not looking at getting a top of the range finish. It's more about protection. But I mean, from my older machine, so this is a 60-1, this machine, so for every 1 psi I put into this machine, I'm getting 60 at the tip. And we can put up to sort of 50, 60 psi into that machine. So, you know, it's a very, very powerful machine. We can have long hoses so we can go all the way around the boats, and the power is unbelievable. So in order to get the sort of build up of the paint that we need for the manufacturers to be happy, we want at least 300 microns of epoxy below the waterline. And with a lot of the older boats that are coming in now to us with heavy pitting and stuff, to be honest, we want to be looking at more than that, at least 400 to 500 microns. So to do that in a cost-effective way and not using loads and loads of thinners to thin the paint down, well, the thinner the paint is, the less microns we're getting. So then we got to, you know, we could end up painting a boat with that machine probably 3 times, 3 different applications, which all takes time and money. And, you know, whereas this machine can do it in sort of 2 passes, I can probably get 400 microns, which is perfect for our new builds. You know, that's more than adequate on a new build. So we'd put 2 coats, wet on wet, of epoxy through this machine, job done. If we've got, like I say, a heavily pitted older boat, 3 coats is probably going to give us 500 plus microns. So, you know, we can do it very quick and easy. Still 3 coats of paint, in, you know, is quite easy achievable in a day, because you've not thinned it down so much. Less risk of the paint sagging. I've seen other builders and boats where they've tried to use epoxies and they've thinned them down that much and they've sprayed them, and it's just, it looks like it's running off the boat. That's what I say, epoxies are not easy to get used to using. You know, and maintenance of the machine and everything. So that's why I've gone back to one of these big King machines. The guns, to be fair, have come on leaps and bounds since we last used one, to be fair. It's a lovely gun to hold, and, you know, it's got a filter in there, and it's, to be fair, they're much better than the older guns I had. As you can see, there's a lot of expense just in these 3 machines here, you know, so it's not cheap to do it, and to do it properly. If you wanted to do the same job as us with just a brush and a roller, you know, you'd be looking at probably 10 or 12 coats of paint maybe. So, you know, this is a way of doing it quickly enough to try and make it more cost effective. The world we live in at the moment, you know, everything has to be done in a time scale to try and make profit. I know from lots of comments people think there's a massive amount of profit in these boats, but I can assure you it's not quite as it seems at times. Trying our best to keep costs down for the customers, but give a quality product, and, you know, that's why we have to keep investing in machinery and tools, and unfortunately they don't last either, you know. Especially, you know, that's why I went for the bigger machine, because, you know, that smaller machine is great, but they're struggling to last sort of 18 months. We all wear out eventually. It's more investment for the company, and hopefully it'll pay dividends in the future.